So a few years ago, I was driving in my car, and it was like a little bit of traffic there on the road, and I was pretty much stuck in my lane. Like, there were enough cars in the other lane that I couldn't switch over to the lane next to me, but I could see up ahead that people were swerving around something in the road, that they were all scooching to the other lane. So I looked and I checked my blind spot, but I couldn't get into the other lane because there were cars there. So I knew whatever was in front of me, I was just going to have to sort of hit dead on. You guys know what I'm talking about. And as I looked up and the cars finished swirling, I realized that there was this huge pothole right there in the middle of the road. I mean, it is Minnesota, so we get ginormous potholes. And the point is that I had no choice. I had to go right through that pothole. It was the curb or the cars on the other side. So I went right through the pothole. And I did, and you could hear that noise in your car, like you know that you just screwed something up, but you didn't have a choice to do it. I heard that noise in my car, and after I got through the pothole, all of a sudden, my steering wheel, in order to drive straight, I had to have it sort of turned a little bit this direction. You see, my car, through the pothole, had been misaligned. I think that this happens in our lives too. We're just driving along, we're cooking along in our lives, and all of a sudden something comes and we didn't intend to hit it, but it throws off our alignment. And so we find ourselves sort of having to sort of muscle through just to be able to go in the direction that we are headed. You see, I think there's lots of ways that our lives get misaligned. Our marriage isn't exactly how we expected or wanted our marriage to be. Our relationships with our friends or our children. Something comes along and our job just doesn't give us the joy that once time it did. Or we have these great big dreams in our lives, these visions for what we hope to accomplish in the world and in our lives, but we just can't seem to find a way to pull it off. We have these times when we feel out of whack and it just feels off. So here's our question for this session here today. How do we get realigned in our lives? How do we get our lives to feel like they fit again? You see, I think for some of us, we take that wheel and then we try and muscle it. We try and muscle it back. We steer ourselves with like intention and manifesting and self-care. We write hardcore in our gratitude journals and we push ourselves to go get another degree for another career change, or we work harder at the gym so that we can be more aligned with our bodies. But I think these things are good things. I don't hear that I don't like them. I think that they're all good things. But I think sometimes when we're muscling and trying to get things aligned, I think that we're plugging ourselves into the wrong source. We sit there and we say we want to do self-care, so we plug ourselves right back into ourself. We take our misaligned selves and we plug back into the one that is already misaligned, instead of plugging ourselves into the one who can actually align us. You see, for my car as the driver, I can't fix the misalignment by being the driver. I can't fix the misalignment by pulling on the steering wheel harder. But for my car, the mechanic can. The one who understands how that car was made can bring it back into straight alignment. So how do you find alignment in your life when your life doesn't go as planned? I think to start, as Pastor Danielle Strickland puts it this way, she says, humility is about you and God agreeing about who you are. First, I think to start, you have to agree with God about who you are, because you are a beautiful, beloved child of God. You have to know that as God's child and God's beloved, that God is working on your behalf. Not just working on your behalf, but relentlessly, tirelessly, excessively working on your behalf. And this is such a beautiful thing for us to absorb into our lives, because you see, when God looks at your life, God's looking at all of it, not just this little part that feels misaligned. God's looking at all of it, not the little section with the pothole, but God is looking at all of your life, where God has maybe closed a door that you think maybe should be open, but that's just for another reason that you just can't see yet. You see, God is always working things for your good, as it promises us in Romans chapter 8. A few years ago, I was looking for a job in ministry. It was way before I came here to Calvary. And I sent my resume to a few of my friends that were pastors. And I was offered 2 different positions at 2 different churches right about the exact same time. One congregation was a mega church, and they worshiped maybe 12,000 on a weekend. This church was 5 minutes from my house. And the other church that I was offered a position at was a church that worshiped maybe 80 people, if we were lucky. And this church was 25 minutes from my house. The work that they both asked me to do was kind of similar. The pay was similar. But with my ambition and my drive, I was going to go ahead and take the job at the mega church. And as I was getting ready and all prepared to sign my papers of employment there, the person inviting me to asked me to sign their staff covenant. Now, as I was looking at their staff covenant, there were some things on their covenant that I actually didn't really agree with. There were things that were kind of patriarchal and graceless expectations, and I had questions about it. And I said, I just can't just sign this just right off the bat. And I asked questions, and as I tried to push into these questions, the guy who was asking me to sign it said, is that what that means? Like, I don't even know that I believe in it. The whole thing was just very, very frustrating, and I wanted to fight it. I went home not having signed any employment papers for this job I was sure I was going to take. And as I prayed about it and thought about it, I knew I couldn't do it. I knew I couldn't do it. I knew I couldn't change that congregation's culture. And so the next week, I took the job at the little church. And let me tell you, it was glorious. The pace was sustainable. The people were beautiful and gracious. The drive, the 25 minutes was cathartic. It helped me to gear up in the morning and let down in the evening. And the work that we did together in that little church was so, so impactful. The thing that was coming that I didn't know was coming was that my mom got cancer for the second time. And this little church, they cared for me during that time. They said, Angie, work from wherever. And so I worked from her bedside at Mayo Clinic about half the time. They allowed me to do things that this giant mega church really wouldn't have let me do. They let me be with her. And then after my mom passed away, at my mom's visitation, that entire church showed up. Right there, first in line, every single one of them to greet me at the visitation. And I am eternally and forever gratefully thankful for them. You see, I thought that this thing was a pothole, but God was just realigning me the whole time because God saw the whole picture. So friends, if your life feels misaligned, like it doesn't fit you right now, quit trying to push it. Quit trying to take that steering wheel and push it over, and instead let the mechanic do the mechanic's work who created you. Let the God who created you direct and guide you. It may not be what you imagine, but it might be better. Proverbs puts it this way. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all ways acknowledge God, and God will make your path straight. And then later in Proverbs, it says, commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established because the Lord has made everything for its purpose. So wherever your misalignment is, I should encourage to plug yourself into the power source that's going to do some work for you. Bring it to God, the author and perfecter of our faith, and ask God to show you which path you should take.